Berlin, May 2, 1945. The city lies in ruins. Smoke curls from shattered buildings, and the distant rumble of artillery echoes through deserted streets. Broken cobblestones glisten under a thin drizzle, reflecting the ghostly silhouettes of toppled statues and abandoned vehicles. Soldiers move cautiously, rifles ready, eyes scanning for remnants of resistance. In a half-collapsed Gestapo headquarters, desks lie overturned, files scattered, evidence of hurried departures. Among the shadows, one figure's absence is most notable: Heinrich Müller, the head of the Gestapo. His office is intact, yet empty, no trace of the man who once orchestrated terror across Nazi Germany. His disappearance will become one of the war's most enduring mysteries, a shadow vanishing into history. By early 1945, Nazi Germany was collapsing under the weight of the Allied advance. The Western Front had been breached, with American, British, and French forces pushing relentlessly across the Rhineland. To the east, the Red Army surged through Poland and Silesia, closing in on Berlin with overwhelming force. The once mighty Wehrmacht was shattered, plagued by shortages of men, weapons, and morale. Heinrich Müller, chief of the Gestapo since 1939, had spent years building a network of surveillance, arrests, and executions that enforced Nazi control. His agency had extended its reach across occupied Europe, suppressing resistance, orchestrating deportations, and eliminating perceived threats to Hitler's regime. Müller was both feared and respected, a bureaucratic architect of terror who operated behind the scenes with ruthless efficiency. As the Reich crumbled, the Gestapo faced disarray. Communications were cut, key officers were killed or captured, and the relentless bombardment of Berlin disrupted operations. Amid the chaos, Müller's precise movements became uncertain. Reports from surviving Gestapo officers hinted at frantic attempts to secure personal escape routes and destroy incriminating records. The city's destruction mirrored the unraveling of the secret police, yet no one could account for its enigmatic leader. By May 1st, with Hitler dead and Berlin encircled, the question loomed: where had Heinrich Müller gone? His disappearance would defy explanation, prompting decades of speculation, investigation, and conspiracy theories. The fall of the Reich had exposed the vulnerabilities of its most feared apparatus, leaving a vacuum filled with rumors, fear, and uncertainty. As Germany surrendered in early May 1945, the Allies began piecing together the remnants of Nazi command and intelligence. Offices once teeming with agents, dossiers, and surveillance files were empty or destroyed. The Gestapo's brutal machinery, which had monitored millions across Europe, had vanished almost overnight. For investigators, one figure remained elusive: Heinrich Müller. Müller had been instrumental in coordinating the final solution, orchestrating deportations, and quelling resistance movements. Yet, despite his high-profile role within Hitler's inner circle, no verified accounts placed him at the war's end. Allied intelligence, particularly the American OSS and British MI6, scoured captured documents and interrogated surviving Nazi officials, but every lead on Müller hit a dead end. The chaos of Berlin's fall created ample cover for disappearance, but it also obscured truth from rumor. The stakes were immense. If Müller had survived, he could provide intelligence on hidden networks, Nazi sympathizers, and missing files critical to post-war security. Conversely, the possibility that he had perished unrecorded only deepened the mystery. This uncertainty amplified fascination and fear alike. A man who had operated in shadows now vanished into them entirely. Meanwhile, former Gestapo officers faced trials at Nuremberg and in denazification courts. Their testimonies offered partial insight into Müller's actions, but none could confirm his ultimate fate. The gap between verified history and speculation widened, creating fertile ground for conspiracy, espionage tales, and decades-long searches. The stage was set for an investigation that would span continents, intelligence agencies, and generations, an inquiry into one of the most secretive figures of the Third Reich. The first angle into Heinrich Müller's story is the human perspective, the man behind the iron will. Müller, known as Gestapo chief, was described by contemporaries as methodical, disciplined, and utterly loyal to Hitler. Unlike many of his peers, he rarely showed emotion, maintaining a cold detachment that allowed him to oversee deportations, interrogations, and suppression of resistance across occupied Europe. Those who survived encounters with him recalled his piercing gaze and meticulous attention to detail. Historians note that Müller's personality created an aura of fear and efficiency, making him both respected and feared within Nazi ranks. This human anchor is critical. The absence of his capture or death left a psychological void for post-war investigators who struggled to reconcile a man so present in atrocities with the silence of his disappearance. The second angle examines the tactical and operational side of Müller's power. As head of the Gestapo from 1939 to 1945, he coordinated intelligence operations, counterespionage, and the identification of anti-Nazi networks. He had direct control over thousands of agents and informants, making him a linchpin in the Third Reich's domestic security. His ability to operate through secrecy and bureaucracy meant that even in the chaos of Berlin's collapse, he had access to escape routes, safe houses, and loyal subordinates. Analysts suggest that these operational structures enabled his disappearance, allowing a man of such influence to vanish where others could not. The mechanisms he designed to suppress and control populations may have ironically facilitated his own evasion. A third lens focuses on the technological and intelligence perspective. Allied forces had captured radio logs, ciphered communications, and Gestapo files during the war's final weeks. Yet Müller's digital and paper trail was minimal, hinting at premeditated erasure or concealment. Cryptographers and intelligence officers studied patterns of communication, suspecting that Müller had hidden in plain sight, possibly using the same networks once employed to monitor enemies. This angle underscores the interplay between human cunning and intelligence methods, how one man could exploit advanced surveillance systems to vanish entirely. Each of these perspectives, human, tactical, and technological, reveals fragments of the truth, yet collectively, they amplify the enigma. Müller was a master of control in life. In death or disappearance, he became a master of uncertainty, leaving a historical puzzle that continues to challenge historians and intelligence agencies alike. The fourth angle explores the enemy and investigative perspective. After Germany's surrender, Allied intelligence, particularly the US and British MI6, prioritized tracking high-ranking Nazis. Müller topped the list. Investigators scoured Berlin, interrogated captured Gestapo officers, and cross-checked lists of safe houses, yet every lead ended in a dead end. Former colleagues offered conflicting reports. Some claimed he died defending the Reich, others insisted he fled. This confusion fueled speculation and frustration among the Allies, illustrating the extraordinary difficulty of untangling Nazi hierarchies in the war's aftermath. Next is the moral and ethical perspective. Müller's actions epitomized the bureaucratic efficiency of evil. The Holocaust and Gestapo operations were executed under his supervision, yet his disappearance denied justice to countless victims. Scholars note that this absence challenges conventional moral closure. Unlike other notorious figures who face trials or public retribution, Müller's fate remains unconfirmed. This void raises profound questions. Can the full moral accounting of such crimes ever be achieved if key perpetrators escape accountability? His elusiveness transformed him from mere perpetrator to symbol, a ghostly reminder of incomplete justice. The sixth angle is leadership and influence. Müller operated at the nexus of Nazi power. His relationship with Himmler and Hitler enabled him to execute policies with near total autonomy. In his absence, the structural efficiency of the Gestapo collapsed rapidly, illustrating how central his authority had been. Leadership scholars highlight this as a rare historical example of how the sudden removal or disappearance of a single figure can destabilize complex organizations. His mastery of hierarchy, control, and fear allowed him to vanish without immediate systemic collapse, demonstrating the paradoxical strength and fragility of totalitarian systems. Taken together, these angles, enemy pursuit, moral ramifications, and leadership dynamics, paint a multifaceted portrait. Müller was at once a human enigma, a tactical genius, a technological manipulator, and a moral nightmare. His disappearance not only perplexed immediate post-war investigators, but continues to challenge historians and intelligence experts decades later. The culmination of these perspectives naturally leads into the climactic search and final sightings, where the story of Heinrich Müller's vanishing becomes most intense, weaving uncertainty, intelligence operations, and wartime chaos into a dramatic turning point. April 30, 1945. Berlin is in flames. Soviet artillery pounds the Reichstag, smoke rising like a black cloud over the shattered city. The streets are littered with rubble, bodies, and abandoned vehicles. Amid this chaos, Heinrich Müller moves through shadowed alleys and crumbling government buildings, avoiding both Soviet patrols and panicked German remnants. Intelligence reports place him near the Bendler block, the Gestapo's nerve center, but by now the building is compromised, its corridors crawling with Red Army soldiers. Müller's movements are not random. He relies on an intricate network of couriers and hidden passages established during the war. Allied reconnaissance intercepts snippets of communications, noting the disappearance of critical Gestapo files documents that, if captured, could reveal operational secrets and surviving personnel. For Soviet and American intelligence alike, these missing records intensify the urgency of the search. Agents fan out, interrogating captured officers, following leads from Munich to Hamburg, all attempting to pin down the elusive Gestapo chief. Meanwhile, Müller's own subordinates vanish into the maelstrom. Some surrender, others attempt escape. Yet, even with the Allies advancing on multiple fronts, Müller's meticulous planning allows him to remain unseen. Eyewitness accounts from the Soviet sector describe a tall, composed man, always cloaked, slipping through streets while the city crumbles around him. Civilians speak in hushed tones of a ghost navigating the ruins, a figure both feared and mythologized in the final days of the Third Reich. This period also highlights the tactical genius of evasion. Intelligence analysts later note that Müller understood not just security, but psychology. By cultivating ambiguity, spreading misinformation, and controlling what few records remained under his command, he created a situation where even Allied forces, flush with victory, could not trace him. April 30th transitions to May 1st, Hitler is dead. The Four bunker is emptied. The vacuum of power accelerates Berlin's collapse. Allied forces sweep through, detaining thousands, yet Müller is absent. Last verified sightings are sketchy, often contradictory. A courier claims he saw him near the Tiergarten. A Soviet patrol reports intercepting a man matching his description near the Friedrichstrasse station. None can confirm his identity. The tension builds because every lead ends ambiguously. Allied and Soviet intelligence, despite enormous resources, cannot conclusively track him. Each arm magnifies the uncertainty, the suspense of whether Müller will be captured, escape, or perish unnoticed. The decisive moment is not a battle, but the unfolding puzzle of disappearance, a confrontation between a singular mind and a world determined to find him. This unresolved pursuit sets the stage for Climax, Part 2. Where the final attempts to pin Müller down collide with the chaos of post-war Europe, ultimately defining the mystery that endures to this day. May 2, 1945. Berlin has surrendered. Soviet troops methodically search every building, every cellar, but Müller has vanished. The Gestapo's once formidable headquarters are silent, empty except for scattered files and abandoned weapons. Allied and Soviet forces coordinate intelligence sweeps, but the city itself has become a labyrinth of rubble and deception, ideal for someone as methodical as Müller. Reports emerge from multiple sources, some credible, some spurious. A witness near the Spree River claims to have seen him board a small boat under cover of darkness. Another, in a crumbling apartment in Charlottenburg, swears he passed a man matching Müller's description carrying a satchel of papers. Each account fuels a myth, a sense that the Gestapo chief has transcended the city itself, slipping through the cracks of history. Simultaneously, Allied intelligence begins interrogating captured officers across Germany. They uncover fragments of plans hinting that Müller intended to use false identities and prearranged escape routes into Bavaria or Austria. The Gestapo's meticulous contingency plans, long classified, reveal an officer obsessed with control even in defeat, laying traps and decoys for anyone attempting to track him. By the time Berlin is entirely occupied, every known safehouse has been scoured, every Gestapo network interrogated. Yet Müller remains unconfirmed, neither captured nor verified dead. The tension reaches its zenith in May 1945. While Europe celebrates the end of the war, the question of Müller's fate lingers like a shadow over intelligence agencies. Interpol and the Allies launch coordinated searches across Europe, tracking aliases and forged documents. Even high-ranking former Nazi officials in custody offer conflicting accounts, some claiming he perished in Berlin's chaos, others asserting he fled to South America. The lack of definitive evidence becomes a defining narrative of post-war intelligence operations. Ultimately, the decisive breakthrough is not the capture of Müller, but the revelation of how a single individual, leveraging the structures and secrecy of the Gestapo, could evade the combined efforts of two of the world's most powerful intelligence networks. His disappearance exposes vulnerabilities in Allied and Soviet operations, while underscoring the extreme discipline and cunning of those at the heart of Nazi power. The story of Heinrich Müller's vanishing acts as a bridge to the aftermath, where the psychological impact on intelligence agencies, the surviving Gestapo network, and post-war investigations creates ripples that extend far beyond the immediate collapse of Nazi Germany. The fall of Berlin left Europe in ruins, but the enigma of Heinrich Müller became one of the war's most persistent mysteries. Allied and Soviet intelligence were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth: a man at the apex of Nazi secrecy had simply vanished. Despite interrogations of hundreds of Gestapo officers, review of abandoned offices, and exhaustive document analysis, no definitive trace emerged. The psychological weight of his disappearance haunted both officials and historians, raising questions about the limits of intelligence in a post-war world. Former Gestapo networks, now scattered, were demoralized. Without Müller's oversight, remaining operatives struggled to reconcile the chaos of surrender with the ingrained discipline they had maintained for years. Many were captured or defected, yet a few maintained clandestine networks, partially guided by loyalty to the absent chief. Allied reports note an unusual pattern. Gestapo operatives displayed coordination even after formal collapse, hinting at pre-planned contingency measures orchestrated by Müller himself. The international intelligence community responded with heightened scrutiny. New protocols for tracking high-level fugitives were drafted, lessons drawn directly from the Müller case. Interpol issued alerts, and agencies in South America, Europe, and the Middle East combed through immigration records, using every available tool to trace his movements. Yet each lead remained frustratingly inconclusive. In the months following Berlin's fall, the absence of a confirmed Müller was as impactful as if he had commanded forces from beyond the grave. His disappearance symbolized both the lingering threat of Nazi remnants and the challenges facing an intelligence world unprepared for the discipline, foresight, and cunning of the Gestapo's most secretive figure. Beyond immediate intelligence concerns, Müller's vanishing had broader consequences for post-war Europe. His absence fueled speculation that former Gestapo networks might regroup, influencing early Cold War paranoia. Allied powers debated how to prevent the escape of other high-ranking operatives, implementing stricter controls over displaced persons and refugee flows. The lessons of Müller's disappearance informed the creation of more sophisticated international intelligence collaboration, including early structures that would later evolve into NATO intelligence sharing and the CIA's counter-espionage strategies. Historians also note the symbolic impact. The Gestapo's feared omnipresence was suddenly diminished, but the unknown fate of its chief cast a shadow over the moral reckoning of occupied Europe. Survivors of Nazi oppression, from France to Poland, were forced to confront a disturbing ambiguity: some of the men responsible for terror and mass murder had eluded justice entirely. This uncertainty shaped post-war trials, influencing prosecutorial strategies and the prioritization of evidence against the most traceable perpetrators. Even decades later, Müller remained a figure of obsession for intelligence historians and conspiracy theorists alike. Cold War operatives frequently referenced his disappearance as a case study in operational security, the ultimate testament to planning and foresight. From Vienna safehouses to South American jungles, rumors and unverified reports continued to surface, reinforcing the enduring mystique of a man who had orchestrated terror on a continental scale and then simply vanished without a trace. The shadow of Heinrich Müller's disappearance would linger, setting the stage for reflection on power, secrecy, and the limits of justice in modern warfare. Heinrich Müller's disappearance after the collapse of Nazi Germany illustrates the fragility of power built on fear and secrecy. A man who had orchestrated terror across Europe, commanding one of history's most ruthless intelligence networks, vanished without a trace, leaving both justice and historians in uncertainty. His case underscores the limits of authority and the enduring consequences of clandestine operations, how the structures of control can outlive the regimes that create them. It also reflects a broader truth about war and human ambition. Even in defeat, individuals can slip through the cracks of history, challenging our assumptions about accountability, memory, and the pursuit of justice.